the average American only eats 2 ounces of red meat, but we have 17 tablespoons of added sugar every single day. So it's fascinating to look at the statistics of chronic disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and blame red meat for what we ultimately think sugar is doing to us, which is the ultimate root cause of all inflammation in the body.
Now, if you start now eating good food and stop eating shit that comes in bags and boxes, stop eating those 2 things and stop drinking soda, even diet soda, don't drink any of that shit, and your life will improve dramatically.
Definitely.
And you will live longer.
When I had really bad autoimmune issues and was told I was going to be on meds that were $400K a year, it was incurable, there's no hope of getting off this thing. And then I started following an all-meat carnivore diet and eating the exact foods that my doctors were telling me not to eat. That was actually what healed me and cured my inflammation. It cured my microinflammation. Only patient that my GI had ever gotten off of these drugs before. So that for me was like, okay, you basically need to take the pyramid as it exists, flip it upside down, because everything they're telling me not to eat is what I ate. That's ultimately what cured me. So that's step 1, right? Is like actually fixing the foods and the macronutrients, and you feel so good. You get this, you boost your testosterone, your hormones start to regulate. You actually have this mental clarity, because most people are just in this consistently low metabolic rut because of all the food-like substances they've been eating.
We've got a special guest today, Brett Ender from Meat Mafia. How's it going?
Good, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
We're going to do this. I thought we were going to do this fully vertical. No, that's what we talked about when you came on our show a couple months ago.
I don't remember that, dude, to be honest. Fully vertical, what does that mean? Like standing up?
Just standing up the entire time.
Oh, no, I don't do that. I'm lazy as shit.
Yeah.
Although we have, my buddy Mickey Gall is a UFC fighter. He always stands up during the show, even if everybody else is sitting down. So we have to adjust camera angles for his princess ass every time, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be low maintenance here.
He's a Boston boy, right?
I think they're Jersey.
Okay.
I think he's from Jersey, yeah.
Nice.
I don't remember. Is that where you're from, Boston?
I'm from Jersey originally, and then I played baseball in college up in Boston. It's absolutely miserable.
What school did you go to up there?
So I first played at a Division I school in New Jersey called Seton Hall University. So I had a scholarship to go there.
Everybody knows what Seton Hall is, I think.
I think so.
It's a Big East school. Well, in basketball.
Yeah, they're good at basketball. They have a good baseball team too. And then wasn't playing much there, so I just transferred to Babson, which is a small business school up in Boston, just to try and get a good education. And that's where I went to school.
What kind of school is Babson? Like, what did you major in, I guess?
It's interesting because it's actually a straight business school. It's only 2,500 students, and if you graduate from Babson, you have a degree, a bachelor's in business administration, but they're known for their entrepreneurship program. And that's really interesting because like 99% of kids I went to school with are just in corporate jobs, whether it's, finance, accounting, consulting, et cetera. There's very few people that go on to actually start their own businesses, even though it's an entrepreneurial school.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think what's interesting, because I've learned so much more about building businesses from YouTube than I ever actually did in college. And I think it's just the programming of these higher ed institutions, just teaching you to become really good employees, focus on, 401k benefits, incentives, the security that comes with that versus all the opportunity that exists to actually become a business owner. It's like, my girlfriend's dad is a plumber. He's been doing it for 30 years, does super well for himself. And I remember in high school thinking, almost like looking downly on trade jobs, because that's what I was taught. And now it's like, if I was to recommend my own kid, hey, should I get a trade job or go to college? I'm like, you should definitely get a trade job when you're 17, 18 years old.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it would have made a lot of sense for everybody to do something like that. I mean, I don't know if it's the cart leading the horse or what, but all these tech careers, I think a lot of it is fake, to be honest. I don't think a lot of those jobs are real. We saw that over the last couple of years with Facebook and Google both axed between 10 and 25,000 each. When Elon Musk took over Twitter, he fired 7,500 people or some bullshit like that. And then you look at the way that the apps operate, Uber, DoorDash, all these apps that provide, not streaming apps, but ones that provide a physical service of some sort. They've been operating in the red there the entire time they've existed. It's all kind of a shell game. I think it's like an IPO. You're pumping and dumping, but it had the, I guess, short-term benefit of creating all these tech jobs. And now, because that was the phraseology back in the day when coal and other fucking manual labor jobs started to get attacked. They're like, well, just learn to code.
Yeah.
They built up this industry that doesn't actually need that many people, right? It's just classical mission creep or bureaucratic bloat. And now you have a fuckload of kids with student loans who can't get jobs to pay commensurate with what they thought would be their value, right?
Totally.
So we kind of butt fucked the next gen. We'll make a comeback in this iteration of the economy over the next 2 or 3 years. But long term, we're kind of fucked, to be honest. I don't know how we're going to dig our way out of this.
Yeah, and I see it with a lot of people that I went to school with, because I'm 29, so I'm in that demographic where you're starting to see a lot of people get engaged, get married, want to have kids. They're looking at purchasing their first homes. I'm from Jersey, as I mentioned, and like the average price of a house there is like, for a shitty house, is like $900K. So no one can really afford everything. The amount of friends that I have that are living at home with their parents, or they're forced to rent and they can't really afford like a shitty starter house, is pretty incredible. And I'm seeing that real time. And I also appreciated some of the comments you said about the bloat that's in tech, because I actually started my career off at a fintech company for 3 years. I was the first sales rep that they hired. So I was employee number 30. When I left, I think we had grown to close to 200 employees. And to your point, it's like what was driving the business was a couple really good sales professionals, a couple really good engineers, and everything else was just like this artful choreography and bullshit. And there's this weird like altruistic veil that I think a lot of these tech companies have too. And I think a good example of that is when the George Floyd situation happened. We had a company stand up, and we basically had every black person at the company talk about their feelings and events
Who
about
cares?
George Floyd. It was like 10 of them. And my buddy, who's like pretty middle of the road, had to speak. And he was like, yeah, I was super uncomfortable doing this. And I don't know if this is a dumb statement or not, but there's part of me that respects investment bankers more than people that are in tech, because I at least respect the fact that they're just in that industry to make a shitload of money. I at least respect the transparency of that versus the altruistic veil that I think a lot of these tech companies have.
Yeah, I mean, that used to be one of the, if you went to any of the tech conventions or whatever, or even if you just read their prospectuses when they were startups, so many of them had the same tagline, which is, we're going to make the world a better place. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. Just say you're a business and you're trying to make money. I don't respect that shit at all, because you're trying to like weaponize empathy against people. But we'll talk about more of that here in a minute. Tell me about, God damn it. Tell me about your upbringing. Where'd you grow up, and what were your parents like? What did they do?
Yeah, so really good upbringing. I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey. I grew up about 10 minutes away from Princeton University's campus, so really nice town.
So not far away from Einstein then.
Exactly. Yeah, Einstein. And
I think his house is still there.
It is still there.
Right down the street, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he recently passed away, but whoever Beautiful Mind actually was too.
Oh, yeah, John Nash.
You would literally just see him pacing and just like talking to himself on the streets, which is pretty interesting. So, yeah, but I grew up in that town, really good upbringing. Great parents. I have one sister. I only have one sibling. Dad played college baseball as well. He's been in consulting his entire career. Both my parents, super blue collar upbringing. My mom's dad was a meter reader, an electrician, worked multiple jobs. My dad's dad was also an electrician as well, actually electrical engineer, and just kind of was instilled with those blue collar principles and work ethics. So, my dad's had a really good career, but they've always just raised us, my sister and I, just the right way with good principles, work hard, pursue baseball as hard as you can, focus on grades, just being a good human being, having a faith component as well. So, it's something I see a lot with my buddies that are fucked up. It's amazing how many of them have either some type of a gap with the father or like some type of a father wound there. And I've always felt that it's almost like when you have good parents, your obligation is just to not fuck things up at that point, because you're given such a great hand. And I feel like that's kind of how I was raised.
Yeah, I wonder if people who did have solid upbringings are starting to notice that, because it's easy to take that kind of thing for granted. I mean, if you've always been surrounded by supportive people, that's just how it is for you, right?
Totally.
Like you don't know what it's like to not have that. So I mean, I can imagine that, because my life was my childhood wasn't great, but it's I could see just having visited the Middle East, I could see even with my not so great childhood, I still took a lot of stuff for granted. It was, just not having to worry about dying, for example, right, is a pretty big deal apparently.
Yeah.
It gives you a lot of leeway to do different shit and take chances and stuff like that. And I think that's the real problem that we're seeing with this safetyism nonsense these days, where suburban families have gotten really comfortable, which is good. That's a good thing to some degree, to not have to worry about existential threats. But the parents, the boomer generation especially, but even now the Gen X generation who have kids, have dropped the ball insofar as figuring out a way to stimulate and motivate their kids to go do shit, right?
Yeah.
Like the point of getting comfortable was, there's two pathways you can take. You can become introspective, and that way madness lies, right? You're just sitting around thinking about life and shit like that, and this is what a lot of people used to talk about back in the day, that once we become comfortable, we can start looking inward and discover more about ourselves. Like, what the fuck does that even mean?
What does that mean?
Like, to see how fucking fragile I am and then make that my identity. Your identity is what you choose to do with your time, right? Whether you choose to be a good or bad person, whether you choose to focus on yourself or other people, whether you choose to do the right thing or not, whether you choose to engage in things and with people who share your values and stuff like that. That's your real identity. It's what you do. That's what Batman said, right?
Yes.
Like, you are what you do, basically.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it became a big problem over the last 35 or 40 years or so with the latchkey kid thing. And now with the safetyism, it's all kind of gone in one direction. And that direction is to, instead of having training wheels on the tricycle that eventually come off, you're wrapped in bubble wrap for your entire life, right? So you never, then you have to go out into the wild, and parents wonder, like, well, why is my kid 25 and still living with me? It's because you fucking failed. That's
Definitely.
why. If you have a 25-year-old living with you at home right now and they're not physically disabled, or there's some other extenuating circumstance going on, you have failed.
Yes.
Right? But the good news is you can correct that now with a fucking, just beat the Christ out of them with a fucking metal rod or something and get them out of your house.
I love that.
Probably something less harsh than that, but figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not doing your kids. I talked about this with someone the other day. We have delayed maturity by not letting our kids be more exposed to risk early on, right? You will, as a human being, you will mature as fast as you are required to mature, right? So
yes.
Someone who loses their parents, or they lose their dad and they have to start working early, or if it's a teenage woman, she gets pregnant, she's got a child now, people will rise to that level.
Yeah.
Like almost always. It's crazy. I've seen people, even in their 20s and stuff, but people who are complete retards, right?
Yeah.
Have some kind of instance where now they've got to be mature, and they just become mature overnight.
Definitely.
Almost. And it's happened to people that I thought were complete shitbags before, and they turned into good people afterwards. And that's the thing, right? If we say iron sharpens iron, the iron that sharpens you as a principled human being is the responsibility that you take on.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And delaying maturity doesn't do any benefit to the person, and it definitely doesn't do any benefit to society, because now we have, we have people who can't take care of themselves.
Yep.
That's fucked, right?
Yeah. We talked extensively about this when you came on my podcast, which was an amazing episode. And you were talking a lot about this concept of, instead of going internal and figuring out how you can be happy, the actual way to be happy is to just view yourself as a tool that can help society to be better and just add value. And I literally had chills when you were saying it, because I think it was the advice that has been permeating in my brain for the last couple of years, especially as I kind of got out of the nest in the Northeast and have been doing my own thing through the podcast, through Noble, et cetera. And I think it's just the blunt, honest advice that a lot of men need to hear. And to your point, if you have a 25-year-old that's living at home, you don't have a man, you have a man-child. And I would think even with you, as it sounds like there were some fucked up parts to your upbringing and your military experience. In a lot of ways, that's also your superpower, I think, too, and why you're so successful.
Yeah, it certainly helps. I mean, if you rise to the level of, the challenge, I think that's Eye of the Tiger, right? Then, you can beat Clubber Lang eventually,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's how it works. It's like I think the phrase that I mentioned on your show is from Gandhi, and he said, if you want to truly find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others, right? And that's true. Actually, I think I talked about this on the show last week sometime, but Shia LaBeouf was on John Bernthal's show recently, and he was talking about, how he used to be a fucking piece of shit, right? And he said, my entire life was about being happy. That was my goal in life, is to achieve maximum happiness for myself. And it's that is addiction, right? That's the definition of addiction. You're constantly chasing that high. And he said, now, after getting married and having a child, my goal is to be valuable.
Yes.
Right? To people, to society, or whatever. And that, like, the Sigma male poison that's going around on the right now, the black pill that they think they're fucking, it's hipster nonsense, really.
Yeah.
And it's cowardice. Like, I'm taking my ball and going home. Or girls were mean to me in high school, so women have no value
Definitely.
to me now. That's fucking stupid, right? But the truth is like, whether somebody calls you like you're simping for society, or you're a bootlicker because you're working inside the confines of whatever the fuck society you're in, that's dumb, man. I mean, look, if you want to make change, then go make change. I support that, certainly. But if you're just going to take your ball and go home and divest from society, then you don't exist to me anymore.
Totally.
You're a net negative, frankly, right? You're just leeching as much, like, you're still benefiting from all the society that exists. You're safe, relatively safe from everything. You've got food security for the most part. You're benefiting from all the stuff and contributing nothing. You're a net negative. You're a piece of shit, right? You're a fucking leech. You're the thing that you hate the most.
Yes.
And that's fucking sad, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the downsides to Austin that I've noticed since I moved here a year ago, and I'm sure you've noticed this far more extensively than me, but it's interesting to go to these gyms and these health and wellness centers, and you see all these people that are so lost, like broke, negative dollars in their bank account. They're trying to do like somatic breath work and cold plunge and sauna as their means to get their life together. And it's like, no, it just fucking takes hard work, and that's really it. And a mindset for me that's been really helpful because I was making really good money at a young age when I was in my sales job, and quit to do everything that we're doing with Mafia and Noble. And it's basically been 2 years of just almost every dollar we make, we just reinvest back into the business. And every once in a while you have these like little pity parties where you're like, oh, I wish we were bigger. Or I wish we were making this from sponsorships. And the most helpful thing for me has just been like, motherfucker, you literally chose to do this. You're trying to grow a podcast and a supplement company, two of the hardest businesses to grow. So if it was about money, you should just go back and take your old job, or you could just nut up, work harder, build the right contacts, and just see what happens over the course of 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of patience required for that, though. But the good thing about that, and this is something that we've also failed kids with, and then, failed ourselves with as well, I think, to a large degree because of a lack of discipline. But there is a big disconnect between in the relationship between effort and outcome these days, right? It's like this whining or the pity you may feel for yourself because things aren't going as good as they maybe could. Like, why should that be the expectation? You know what I mean? Like, if you frame the problem in a way that it simply exists and it's something to deal with rather than having it, like, you should, I think that you should more or less dispassionately apply the principles that you believe in to life, right? This, not that you shouldn't have passion about certain things, but you can't be the highs and lows of trying to chase specific outcomes is a problem for people, I think. And the reality of the situation is you can't control the outcome of things. You can control your attitude and your effort, right? Yeah. And the outcomes will vary. They should put that on the fucking, on any self-help book. Like, outcomes will vary from this because that's the reality of the situation. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't, shoot for the highest possible outcome. Obviously, you should, right? I think, well, you talked about John Nash. I don't know if he would agree with that because Nash's equilibrium theory says that we should work together and kind of, whatever. But, and he's not entirely wrong about that. But Keynesian economics would say that everybody, and this is a pretty widely held opinion, that everybody should try to do the best for themselves and help others when they can, right? I think is the widely held belief there, economically speaking. So, how do you do that and not get upset about it? You know what I mean? Like, how do you deal with failure? I guess I think it's a big problem for people. Yeah, because there's two very different things, and people get confused about these. I think they overlap them in ways that they shouldn't. There's the spent cost fallacy, right? Like, I've spent so much time on this, I have to keep going. Well, if you were walking down a trail and the trail ended, would you just like walk into the jungle? Yeah. Or would you turn around and go back the other way and figure out where you're going? The answer to that is very obvious. It's not always so obvious in life, but the other side of that coin is, like, when you meet resistance, you can whine and buckle, or you can just like, okay, well, this is the thing I have to do today. Like, you wake up in the morning and it stormed last night and there's some tree branches in your yard. Just go fucking pick them up, man. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. But somehow, for whatever reason, I'm not entirely sure what it is, and maybe it's different for everybody to some degree, but we have reached this point in society where that happens, and I have to go fucking whine about it on my phone. Like, oh, the worst thing happened to me today. Here's it. Just to like, what I guess the only thing I can think of that makes sense is that victimhood in varying degrees is the prime social currency of our time. Yes. Right? Instead of success or fucking goodness, like principled life, it's victimhood has taken over those things. Yes. It's very bizarre to me, to be honest, because there's no real value in that. Well, I guess there is. There's dopamine value. It's quick, right? Yes. It's quick, but it's like there's no intrinsic value to victimhood.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I was talking a little bit about the Austin fitness culture. I know a dude that literally put a social media post with a screenshot of his bank account, which was negative $350, and effectively just throwing a pity party for himself and telling people that 2024 is the year of him like grinding and getting what he wants, is building out his coaching business. And I'm like, I know that deep down you want people to feel bad for you so they feel obligated to buy your coaching package versus actually just putting out a product that's so good that people don't have any other choice but to buy it. And that's what drives me crazy. And I think to your earlier point about how do you deal with failure, I know you're good buddies with Tim Kennedy. I just love that quote of hurry up and fail. And when I think about myself, dude, when I was in 8th grade, I got cut from the middle school baseball team. That motivated the shit out of me. I actually learned how to understand work ethic, actually sharpening my ability. Went on to have the second highest batting average in my high school's history, was all state. Ended up getting 25 scholarships. Went to Seton Hall, completely shit the bed, anxiety, couldn't throw strikes, etc. Got cut from that team, which then led me to Babson, where I met some of my best friends, started developing a little bit more of an entrepreneurial skill set. For me, it's like all these failures I've learned sharpened me up so much. And so there's almost like this brainwashing that I try and do when shit's hitting the fan, whether we lose a client or something gets fucked up with the show, or, hey, we have this, founder difficulty with Noble. I just try and brainwash myself to be like, what you said, this isn't a problem. I just have a decision to make. And regardless, this is going to make me so much better if I can pack in these failure-laden moments when I'm 29.
Yeah. But that's not what we do, right?
No.
Like that. You mentioned it's an interesting case study. This guy who and it's not unique either. This guy who fucking is one of these, I guess I would call them like platitude-driven people.
100%.
It's pretty shallow, but it's like rise and grind. This is my year for whatever, blah blah blah, and here's how bad it's been for me. And then you make the follow-up point that whatever product you're offering, that's what matters, right? Like all this other stuff is marketing. Marketing is good to some degree, right? But not if it's wrong, not if it's false. And in this case, with the victimhood stuff, you're marketing your identity, right?
You are.
You're marketing your value to society. So instead of saying, well, I have this, and this skill, and I have this ability to do whatever this thing is that benefits my family and society and shit, and then, that is your identity. Instead, it's like, oh, I'm a victim.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, well, I'm a veteran-owned company, or I'm a black-owned company, or something like that. If that's all you've got as a marketing pitch, then your product fucking sucks.
100%.
And that includes if it's you as a human being. Like if your product, if we're talking about your identity and your social standing and your value to society, if your product is smoke and mirrors, right, and you don't have substance, then you have no real value.
Yes.
That sucks, right? Yep. It's hard for people to face that. I think it's very difficult to do that. And these days, like every major philosophy in the history of the world has warned about this specific thing, about social media specifically, about I don't think it was prescient necessarily to actual technology and social media. I just think that it's obvious what can happen when a human being goes down that road, right?
Yes.
So like the Bible says, I think in Matthew 6, something to the effect of, don't be a hypocrite and pray in public, pray in private, right? Don't put your fucking faith on display. That's not what it's for, right?
Yes.
This is the same thing we do in social media. Like somebody goes to help a charity or something, and they've got a selfie stick.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's not the right deal, man. You're not doing, and I understand that, whatever motivates somebody to do good things, I think there's some value to that, but this becomes fruit of the poison tree.
Yes.
You know what I mean? When the purpose is to collect on the debt that you've just created, right? Mm-hmm. By helping somebody, then that's not really helping them. You know
Definitely.
what I mean? Like you can never live there. I can't remember who wrote this, but it used to be my email signature. You can never live a perfect day until you help someone who can never repay you. Right. And I think that's a really important, like the way we think about this stuff is really important. The way we think about ourselves and our identity is important, and the way that we think about other people and what they have value-wise is important.
Definitely. Yeah, it's funny. You talk about that guy that I referenced, and I have another buddy. It's funny. I know a lot of these people because I think Austin is just filled with this kind of lost, broken, mid to late 20s person that doesn't really know what they should be doing. And I have another buddy who's probably, it's nothing crazy. He's probably like $5 or $6 grand in debt to like his parents and a few other people. And he's just constantly complaining about how broke he is. And then I had to have a really stern conversation with him. And I said, look at the things that you're doing to make money. You're driving for Uber part-time, and then you're affiliating supplements for a brand, and you have 2,000 followers. No shit, you're broke and in this situation. Why don't we find things to do that can actually put money in your pocket so you can get yourself out of debt? Yeah. The first guy that I referenced, I see him at the gym all the time. I see him just kind of like chatting around. I'm like, dude, you have an opportunity where you work at this gym. You're there for 12 hours a day. Why not just try and help clients train or find a way to add value? And like, because for myself, whenever I feel like, hey, I could be doing more, hey, we're not making as much money, I know the things that I need, where I need to water the grass to actually make money for the business. And every time I water that grass, things always work out. Yeah.
It begins and ends with creating value for people. You know what I mean? I mean, you like that. And it's reflected in secondary education too. We have these ridiculous degrees. I mean, University of Texas put out a fucking press release last week that they're going to teach an elective class on the career of Taylor Swift. For what, motherfucker? What? Why do you have $40,000 to $100,000 in debt when that is the product of that debt?
Yeah,
that is retarded. Like, you are wasting your fucking life.
Yeah,
seriously. You can make more money. That's not a problem. But you can't get your time back, man. What a fucking stupid waste of fucking time that is.
Oh my gosh.
Holy shit.
Dude, that's honestly a huge reason why I cleaned my act up when I was probably like 23 or 24 because I went to such a good school. I was fortunate where I think I was saying my dad's a grinder. He did super well. He paid for my full education. You know, Babson is not cheap. Babson's like $80K a year. He paid for everything. And I looked at my GPA, which was probably around like a 3.0 all in. And I was like, I'm an okay student, but I could be so much better. And then I even just looked at my baseball career. I looked at the way I was showing up in my relationships. I looked at my health when I was sick with ulcerative colitis. And I'm like, I basically fast forwarded 10 years down the road. If I just continue this behavior, I'm like, you'll actually be a drain on society and a piece of shit. And you need to clean it up. And that was really, it was almost that guilt and obligation that I felt from pissing my potential away when I was so young. That was kind of been my superpower now. That's helped me a lot.
Well, I mean, we tell kids that it's okay now, right? And it is okay to fail. It's not okay to quit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we haven't done a really good job of making a distinction out of that. As a matter of fact, we've even tried to take failing off the table by, removing standards and shit. I think Oregon just passed a bill this fall that they're going to stop certain standardized testing for black and brown people because they don't score high enough, and I guess they don't want them to feel bad about it. I don't know what the fuck the purpose of that is. It's like scanning somebody for a tumor, finding one, and be like, well, we're not gonna scan anymore.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to hurt this guy's feelings with the cancer he has. But yeah, it's like there's a shame to some degree in the younger part of your life plays a pretty important role in your social development. It's like it's the stick and carrot, right? The stick is like shame is a much more effective stick, in my opinion, than physical, not even abuse. It's like spanking your kids or something.
Yeah.
Having the pressure of society tell them that it's not okay to be a fucking loser, that's important.
Yeah.
Right? And those pressures come in a lot of ways. Not getting a good job, not having the respect of your peers, not being able to find a suitable partner. All these things are supposed to work in that direction. And it's very interesting to me, and not very surprising that as our standards have lowered, our successful outcomes in finding partners, producing children, finding good jobs, managing debt, managing our own emotional health have all plummeted precipitously, right? Because we lowered that standard out of some misguided sense of toxic empathy is what it really is, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's because I'm not a dad, but I've been responsible for people a lot in my life, and I don't want to see them hurt.
Yeah.
I don't want to see my friends hurt, but you can't. If you wrap somebody's brain in bubble wrap, they're fucked. Like seriously, they're fucked.
Totally.
And that's what we've done, and you see the outcome of it now.
Can you think back to any moments where you had a good, trusted friend give you the honest, direct, harsh feedback that you didn't want to hear that you actually needed to hear?
I've always been pretty honest with myself, I think. One of my heroes is Carl Sagan, and one of his quotes is, for me, it's far better to accept the universe as it is rather than persist in delusion, no matter how gratifying the delusion is. And I've always been pretty level-headed when it came to that. Now, we all fool ourselves to some degree, I guess. But I don't know if I ever had an experience where somebody shook the cobwebs out of my head and told me to fucking straighten up. I think I just kind of figured that out. But it would have been probably nice in my teen years.
Yes.
But home life was very tumultuous for me. I didn't really have any guidance. So I was just kind of winging it. But I don't know where I would be now, you know what I mean? Like I fucking made it. I think it benefited me a lot. Especially for my personality type, to be kind of on an island for that period of time. You know what I mean? And it's like, it kind of brings into question what we're doing as a society. Because we're having to more and more manufacture stress, right? Like real stress, the kind that makes you better, not anxiety and shit, but real stress, like finding hard things to do.
Yeah.
But as I said, it's difficult to watch the people you're responsible for struggle or be in pain. And the standard used to be for, at least for dudes, and I think it's probably the same for women, but for dudes, it was like, find a wife, have some kids, have a career, and give your kids a better life than you had.
Yes.
That's kind of the standard, right? But I don't know what that means anymore, because I'm going to have some kids. I don't know how I give them a better life than I had. I mean, I'm not going to beat them when they're young like my dad beat me, but aside from that, my life is pretty fucking dope. You know what I mean? I'm very successful, and I'm well adjusted, and I have a good time in life. I don't know how I'm going to do better for them than what I've done for myself, frankly. So I think we need to pivot a little bit and try to understand what better really means.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I think better just means resilient, prepared for whatever might come, because circumstances are going to change pretty rapidly.
Yeah, I ask a lot of successful dads that we have on the podcast, how do you instill these blue collar principles into a kid, knowing that you love this kid more than anything, you want to give them everything, you have the resources to do so, but then by doing so, you're actually fucking them in the long run. And I still really haven't gotten a great answer, and it's still something I think a lot about. But part of why I was asking you that honest feedback is I think you said the term toxic sympathy.
Empathy, yeah.
Toxic empathy. Mm-hmm. And I think men on men in particular, like I think a lot about, this show, what does it mean to be a good citizen, a great citizen? I think part of it is being a great friend, and particularly men on men. I think you have an obligation to give your male friends super direct, honest feedback. Mm-hmm. I think you'll think this is funny. Like 2 years ago, I was just in the wrong relationship. I was 27. I was dating a 40-year-old. She was a mess. It was a toxic situation. And I saw there were some friends that I knew that they were noticing that this wasn't the right relationship for me to be in. And I had a buddy who called me up and he was like, look, dude, I love you. You're a super talented dude. I respect you so much. This is not the girl that you need to be in a relationship with. I think you should break up with her, and here's why. And I will always respect and remember that conversation because he did the uncomfortable thing and gave me the advice that I needed to hear. And now for myself, it's like, I do not want to be that friend that sits back when I see one of my other buddies that's doing the things that he should not be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess something I do say a lot is who loves you more, the person who pats your back and tells you it's okay when you're trying to jam a knife into an electrical socket, or the person who slaps it out of your hand and calls you a fucking moron, right? I mean, I think it's there's plenty of room between those two outcomes, but one is clearly better than the other.
Definitely.
You're not doing anybody any favors by lying to them. That's why I don't participate in any of this fucking pronoun bullshit.
Yeah.
Like it is a part of it is legit mental illness. Part of it is just a fucking social contagion. Mm-hmm. It's a fad like goth or some stupid shit like that. But people are like, well, I mean, it doesn't hurt anybody to participate in it and just call them whatever pronouns they want. Like, yeah, it does, dude.
Yeah.
It does fucking hurt them because that's not real.
Yes.
You're engaging in lies with them. You're telling them that the lies they believe are true. That you're saying that's not harmful to people. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Have some fucking balls and say, hey, you know what? You can do whatever you want. You're an adult, but I'm not going to participate in your delusion.
Yes.
Sorry. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but that's just not going to happen, dude.
Yeah. It was like what you said about people of color not needing to take certain standardized tests, which is really fucking them in the long term. Mm-hmm. And dude, I saw that firsthand in the tech company I was in. Like there were a number of people on the sales team that were pure diversity hires, not for color, but more so for them being like trans or gay or whatever. Yeah. And there was one individual in particular, I don't even remember what her pronouns were. They were so wild, but she got fired after like a month because you literally couldn't work with her because you didn't know what to call her. She was like just super over the top, created a Slack group channel that non-whites couldn't be in, and it was just a mess. So it's like you see that stuff firsthand where you're not doing these people any favors by hiring them for roles or positions that they're unqualified to be in.
No. Yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb. And this, this attitude, this lax attitude towards reality in favor of platitude and delusional marketing from the individual's perspective and then from all of society, it's pervasive through everything, right?
Yes.
And we can't just talk about victimhood all day. We got to talk about what you actually do. So this shows up on our food a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And it isn't just social contagions. It isn't just mass marketing and factory farming and stuff like that. A lot of it was the government lying to people,
yes,
right? And people being too stupid to see that it was a lie. I don't understand how people in the 1950s who were, engaged in science on a mass scale in a way that had never happened before. There were more advanced degrees being earned in the 1950s than ever before, right? Because the GI Bill and shit like that. Because of the nuclear scare and the 2 bombs we dropped on Japan, people started to understand science a little more, at least to some degree, right? But when it came to nutrition, processed foods and corn syrup entered the market in the 1950s in a big way. And then the food pyramid followed shortly after that. And every part of that was incorrect. Not just like, not a guess that was wrong, but there's no way people didn't know that was wrong.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like corn syrup before it was put into human food was used to fatten pigs before slaughter.
Yes.
Did we really not understand that that was going to be a fucking problem? And I mean, look, it's pre-internet. Who knows, right? Maybe it's hard to find information on shit like that. But we are essentially food secure in the United States when it comes to calories, but not to nutrition.
Yes.
Right? So we have people who are obese and malnourished at the same time for the first time in the entire history of humanity.
Yes.
We have overweight, malnourished people. That's insane.
Yeah. It is insane.
That's like a sleepy crackhead. That doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing when you start to really go down the rabbit hole and you're like, are we in some type of a simulation? Like you had said, there were so many nutritional scientists that existed in the 1950s. How did we really get to this point? I think what everyone needs to do is exactly what you do and what I'm trying to do, of actually take autonomy over the food that you put in your system. And like you said, I think you said it's like attitude and effort are some of the only two things you have control over. And that's true. And then I would say the third leg of that stool is the food and the nutritional inputs you choose to put into your body. So for me, when I had really bad autoimmune issues and was told I was going to be on meds that were $400K a year, it was incurable. There's no hope of getting off this thing. And then I started following an all meat carnivore diet and eating the exact foods that my doctors were telling me not to eat. That was actually what healed me and cured my inflammation. It cured my microinflammation. Only patient that my GI had ever gotten off of these drugs before. So that for me was like, okay, you basically need to take the pyramid as it exists, flip it upside down, because everything they're telling me not to eat is what I ate. That's ultimately what cured me. So that's step one, right? Is like actually fixing the foods and the macronutrients, and you feel so good. You get this, you boost your testosterone, your hormones start to regulate. You actually have this mental clarity, because most people are just in this consistently low metabolic rut because of all the food-like substances they've been eating. And then the second step is you almost start to become this investigative journalist, for lack of a better term, where you start to look into the science and the things that have happened over the last 100 years. And you look at the industrial ranching industry, you look at the processed food industry, you look at the flawed science that was so heavily promoted. And you're like, holy shit, I can pin back to 5 to 10 stories that kind of put us in the exact, metabolic crisis that we're currently in, where 70% of Americans are overweight or obese, and we're spending 16% of US GDP on healthcare costs. So it's like, why even fight? You could just eat yourself to death at this point.
Yeah, and it's not just obese people either. So 40% of America right now is diabetic or in pre-diabetes, and it's not just people. You wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at someone, right? I had a conversation with a woman I know the other day who is like skinny, athletic even. She was a Marine. And she was like, yeah, a couple of years ago I was pre-diabetic, so I had to change my diet because we just happened to be talking about it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
You were pre-diabetic? She was like, yeah. I'm like, how? She's like, because I was eating like garbage all the time. Doesn't matter if your metabolism might be able to keep up with it and burn it, but that doesn't mean that your body's getting the shit it needs, right?
Definitely.
Especially if you're eating, bleached and processed flour, like bread products, and sugary stuff, right? And even fake sugar is a big problem. Don't think sucralose is doing you any fucking favors.
It's not.
It's actually tricking your body. You're better off just eating regular sugar than that.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, it's like you can't always tell, and it's very pervasive in society. For whatever reason, I know there's a lot of money to be made both in the production of food and in the what we like to call the sick care system these days, right? To keep people on the fucking medical tit for their entire lives. But to be honest, the vast majority of stuff you can deal with just with your diet, like literally only your diet. You may have a gene that makes you more susceptible to hypertension, but if your inflammation levels are low, it's not gonna fucking happen. It won't. Maybe when you're super old, right? But inflammation is the root of almost every fucking disease, right? Except for bacterial and viral shit, and then some cancers. But for heart disease, which kills 20% of Americans, right? It's And it's just inflammation. We tried to blame the meat. We tried to blame the fat. We made low-fat stuff with high sugar, made inflammation worse, and made the problem fucking worse.
Yes.
We're goddamn idiots,
Yep.
right? But I feel like there's enough information out there now that people kind of – there's no excuse at this point.
There really is no excuse. And to your point, it's fascinating the way that we scapegoat meat. And I think Sacred Cow, that documentary, does a really good job of depicting it. And the statistic is that the average American only eats 2 ounces of red meat, but we have 17 tablespoons of added sugar every single day. So it's fascinating to look at the statistics of chronic disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and blame red meat for what we ultimately think sugar is doing to us, which is the ultimate root cause of all inflammation in the body.
I have probably 20 ounces of red meat a day.
Yeah.
And 0 added sugar. I don't know where it would come from.
What do you mostly just meat every single day?
I have a shake in the morning, and the shake has blueberries, your protein powder, Noble, a scoop of another protein powder, peanut butter that's natural peanut butter. What else is in there? MCT oil, magnesium, fiber, and milk.
Yeah.
Raw milk. So I might get some. I may get a couple of grams, maybe, I don't know, but not much.
I mean, if it's a natural peanut butter and you're drinking raw milk, there's no added sugar in that.
Even if it was like Jif or something, it's like 3 grams per 2 tablespoons of natural sugar. So like you can, man, you don't have to fucking be a psycho about this stuff.
Definitely.
You don't have to even be carnivore. For a lot of people, I think actually having certain fruits, berries especially in your diet, is probably good for you.
Definitely.
Avocado is good because it is high in omega-3 fat. It's also very high in fiber. I think it's the 3rd highest fiber content of any fruit that exists. And I'm not going to eat passion fruit all the time. That's got the most, 24 grams of fiber, right? It's got a lot. So maybe slip it in once in a while, but other than that, avocado is one of the best things you can eat.
Definitely.
But this isn't. You don't have to go crazy with this stuff. Just avoid sugar. Like we used to like try to. Fat was the devil. We try to avoid fat all the time. That's retarded, right?
Yep.
And then also another reason why we're malnourished. So, in the same way that salt in your body helps pull moisture, water into the muscles and into the bloodstream, lipids, fat carriers, MCT, animal fat, so on. Omega-3 fat as well, carries nutrients into your fucking bloodstream. That's how it works. It is an Uber for the fucking food you eat, right? So we went low fat, ate a bunch of sugar, inflamed ourselves, got no nutrition, and we wonder why we're all fucked right now.
Yes.
And then the one thing that nobody ever really talks about is that 96% of your serotonin is made in your gut, right? The vast majority of your serotonin comes from your gut. Some of it's produced by the brain. The vast majority is produced by the gut. So now we're fat. We're inflamed, we don't feel good, we feel lazy, and we feel emotional all the time.
The gut is like space in a lot of ways, where we know so little about it, but we're learning more and more how important it is. And I think you made an amazing point about whole fat milk. I mean, Dr. Chafee does a really good job of this. There are all these studies from the 1800s, 1900s of people treating soldiers, patients, etc., on red meat removal diets. One of the founders of the Mayo Clinic would actually put his patients with IBS and Crohn's on a raw milk fast for a week, and they would get amazing results from it too. So like, these are things that we've prized for hundreds, thousands, millions of years, that all of a sudden the last really 50 years we've started to demonize it, and now we're the unhealthiest as we've ever, the most unhealthy we've ever been. So I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on, but I really like the nuanced approach that you took about, look, dude, like, the shit's not super complicated. I challenge everyone, if you just took 2 weeks, cooked all your own meals, protein forward meals, red meat, chicken, eggs, fish, etc., whatever you like, nice whack around like the size of your hand or whatever, eat until you're full, throw in some fruit, throw in some vegetables, throw in some bone broth, some butter, some raw milk, dude, you're going to be in such a good spot. But the nutritional space is very similar to the political space, where it's like you have these liberals and conservatives that are so jacked up on one end. It's kind of the same thing with carnivores and vegans, when it's really evolutionarily we're designed to be meat forward omnivores.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly, it's bizarre the way we divide ourselves politically. Like someone did a study recently. I think it was 538, Nate Silver, or not a study, but just an analysis of different contingents of people. And for some reason, people who supported BLM are way more likely to have been COVID hawks, like pro-mask, vaccine mandates, so on. And that same group, that same cohort of people is also the pro-Palestine people, right? None of those things have anything to do with each other.
Yeah.
But for some reason, whether it's because of the parties, the individual parties, or just, I really don't know, to be honest. But we separate ourselves into these weird spaces, and then things tend to come back around. The healthy eater and vax suspicious person used to be a fucking leftist hippie.
Yes.
Right? And now it's not. Right? I mean, I think there's still a lot of those guys out there.
Yeah.
They're quite a bit fewer though than the right-leaning libertarian,
Definitely.
right? Which is what Joe Rogan really is. Even though he says he's a liberal, he's not. I mean, none of the things he believes are fucking liberal. Well, I mean, classically you're liberal, yeah, but it's very bizarre how we've sorted ourselves like this. And I guess it happens. Sorting always happens.
Yes.
In society, but this stuff is getting retarded. I mean, you're killing yourself. You're taking years off of your life. And if you don't care about that, you're taking years away from your family.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Not just actual years of being there, but the quality of those years you're going to spend together. And then you're transferring those bad habits onto your kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's fucked. It's just that you can't do this shit anymore.
Yeah. One of the things we talk a lot about on the show is that we pretty firmly believe that, because one of the big pushbacks you get is, if you're going animal-based or you're buying from regenerative, it's more expensive. And we make the argument that, number one, it's not more expensive, because if you look at the average person's cart, that's not actually food. That's not doing anything for you. There's zero nutritional value. So if you subtract all those things out of your cart and you just focus on the really nutrient-dense foods, it will be cheaper. But even if it was more expensive, red meat should be the most expensive product that you could possibly buy.
Well, it's the most high quality, so why wouldn't it be the most expensive?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we've lost this mindset of being willing to give your hard-earned dollars for a great product, whether it's like with the artisans, the small businesses we choose to support, the meat we buy, the clothes we buy. It's this very globalist, let me just save a penny if I can type mindset versus really paying for quality.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to get more nutrient dense calories out of just like one New York strip or ribeye from a regenerative farm than you're going to get from anything commensurately priced
Definitely
elsewhere. I mean, it's not even close. Plus, you don't have the negative aspects, inflammation and shit like that.
Yeah.
Somebody who has the time should really fucking sit down and do this math about the nutritional, like a bioavailability of nutrition in red meat, fatty red meat especially, versus the average, the CPI index, like the person's cart, like, right? Your grocery store cart, and show like if you, this is, I guess would be maybe a little obtuse the way you would do it, but even if you just did only ribeyes. I only eat ribeyes. That's it. That's all I eat. And it's compare that to what people eat, and then do price for price based on caloric intake and by bioavailability of nutrients. It wouldn't even be fucking close. My guess is it would be 5 to 1. So you're talking about, maybe you're spending 2 or 3 times more for this product, but you're getting 5 more times in value.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And without the medical expenses.
Definitely.
Because you're not fucked anymore.
Yeah, it's like if you look at a Lay's bag of potato chips, it's a really small bag, so it's maybe $1.50 at the grocery store. You're like, but the regenerative meat is like $10, $11 a pound for a pound of ground beef. But the problem is we don't take Lay's potato chips and look at it on a per pound basis and actually make that comparison apples to apples. If you take the Lay's chips on a per pound basis, it's almost as expensive as a regenerative piece of meat. And we get into the benefits of what you're talking about, which is viewing these things like holistic assets and having that motivational focal point of, I want to be the best possible version of myself to provide for my wife, provide for my kids, live on to be able to have these priceless experiences so I can play catch with my grandson when I'm 75 years old. That's actually what can happen when you get your shit together. So I think the concept of viewing nutrition from an actual citizen's lens is so paramount right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we're understanding a lot more about aging too, what happens. I mean, like, think about cellular mitosis. Sorry to take you back to fucking biology in high school, but cellular mitosis happens, and you're basically creating a copy. It's like a stamp. You're just stamping a new cell. And over time, the stamp and the ink get less and less efficient. You know what I mean? And it happens for a variety of reasons. But we're finding ways to, and look, I don't want to fucking live forever. I'm not trying to be a fucking cyborg or anything. But we're finding ways to mute the degradation of cellular degeneration as time goes on, right? Things that are very effective, peptides like ipamorelin, samorelin, things like that. Inclomifene and shit. It's just like we're getting to a point now where you can fucking be playing catch with your kids at 75, your grandkids rather at 75. That's not a crazy idea. You know what I mean? Like, quality life into your 80s and 90s is a real possibility now if you start now eating good food and stop eating shit that comes in bags and boxes. Just stop eating that shit, and you'll stop eating those two things and stop drinking soda. Yeah, even diet soda. Don't drink any of that shit, and your life will improve dramatically.
Definitely,
and you will live longer.
Yes,
it's just the way it is.
Everything that we're doing now, whether it's the podcast, whether it's Noble, the marketing agency that we have, even my relationship with Christ, it wouldn't have happened if I didn't get my shit together with the food that I was choosing to put into my body. Because I think what it does is when you start to clear this crap out of your system and you get your body out of this metabolic rut, you improve your hormone levels, you raise your testosterone, you really start to think clearly for the first time in your life. And I think I was able to say, look, do I actually like the trajectory that my life is on? The honest answer was no. Okay, now let's actually go do something about it too.
The first step is identifying the problem, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you got to admit it. You have to, but it's. I think it's the bystander effect to some degree. It's just in your own life, where if it's why people avert their eyes when they see somebody trip and fall, because they don't want to. It's the general idea is that it's secondhand embarrassment, but really what it is you don't want to take the responsibility to go help that fucking person.
Yes,
that's why we step over homeless people, we step over garbage on the street and shit like that. And if you do it in your own life, then that garbage is going to collect. Definitely. Over time, and that's going to become your fucking life.
Yeah. It's this interesting blend of, because people will ask us a lot, are you optimistic about the future of the food system? And my response to that is I'm optimistic if we can do the right job of spreading this information. And I think people are starting to wake up. And then where I get pessimistic is seeing a city like New York City, where I was for 4 years, and you have Mayor Eric Adams, who's plant-based or vegan, and he's pushing meatless Mondays and plant-based Fridays on our kids that are actually depending on, a lot of those kids are depending on those meals to actually get nutrition in, and they're getting like a seed oil fried bag of tortilla chips, some shit vegetables, no meat at all. And it's interesting how we live in this time of politicians pushing their dietary preferences on kids and really going against evolutionary science and what we should be eating.
It is pretty bizarre. For you personally, are you still on carnivore, or what do you eat now? Like, what's your diet like?
So I use carnivore as a tool. So if I ever feel like I'm starting to go off the rails, I'll just do it strict. So actually starting last Sunday, I was like, you know what? I just feel like I need to tighten shit up heading into 2024. I'm just going to go back strict carnivore. And I'm not fully strict because I still drink coffee, which technically comes from a plant, but similar to you, like 2 big ribeyes a day, 3 or 4 eggs, bone broth, a little bit of blue cheese, eat when I'm hungry, fast when I'm...
A lot of people don't realize if you take, a tablespoon of beef tallow and melt and put it in the microwave with your bone broth, it's pretty nice. It's so good. It's like eating gravy, kind of.
It's so good.
It is really good.
Yeah, there's this company called Fond that's out of San Antonio. The owner's incredible. She's got like 6 kids, and just started making this bone broth all from regenerative bones and regenerative farms, and started selling it at a farmer's market. Now it's in like Whole Foods Central Market, but it's like cracked pepper, turmeric. It's so good. You throw a little butter in there too. It's insane. But yeah, for me, carnivore has always been a tool. And again, it goes back to what you said before. I think a lot of people view going carnivore almost like a religion, where they get so scared of fruits and vegetables and this notion of not being labeled as a carnivore because we love being labeled in these communities. And the purpose of carnivore is to actually build a permeable, resilient body and a gut. And then when you have a resilient gut, you should be able to eat things like avocados, like blueberries, etc. Like, I get it. There are some certain outliers that just do super well on a pure carnivore diet, but I think there's a lot of people that have this mental aversion that they've built up to certain foods.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I like vegetables. They're just fucking pointless. You know what I mean?
They're pointless.
Like root vegetables I will eat because, plants don't have teeth and claws and brains. So the only way they can defend themselves is by being bio-unavailable in some way or another. The way that root vegetables solve that particular problem is they hide themselves under the ground. Well, I'm smarter than you, I can find you, right? But stuff that grows above ground for the most part is fucking pointless, to be honest. Like especially these days with factory farming, but even if you're growing your own tomatoes and shit, that's good. Good for you. You should do that and eat those all you want. But some like green vegetables and shit, they're fucking pointless, to be honest. You're not getting shit out of that. Even if you're growing it yourself, you're not really getting anything out of that.
Yeah.
Which is weird because the FDA will tell you that you need to eat 28 servings of those a day. Like, oh, yeah, right, dude. For what fucking purpose?
Yeah.
The reason you have to eat so much is because even intrinsically the absorption rate is extremely low because there's no fat at all on it unless you're eating it with legumes or fucking animal fat. And with today's factory farming, bioavailability of nutrients are pretty much non-existent.
Yes.
Like, you shouldn't have to eat 28 servings of something. And if you do, then just fucking move on, dude. There's no fucking point in that shit.
Yeah, your point on bioavailability is so important and something that needs to be more mainstream because we, on social media, Game Changer, some of these other plant-based films that got popularized based off of no science, really just like really effective marketing. People will look at, the vitamin profile of broccoli versus meat. It's even stronger in these certain nutrients, but it's the bioavailability piece. The number means jack shit. It's what are you actually absorbing? And animal foods are statistically the most nutrient-dense bioavailable things that your body will actually absorb.
Well, these are things that you talk about regularly. Tell people about your show.
Yeah, so the podcast is called the Meat Mafia Podcast. I co-host it with my best friend Harry, who you've met. We're 260 episodes in, and it's really addressing the fundamental question of, how do we really fix the food system and teach people how to connect with ranchers, benefits of animal products, different health and wellness practices. We just try and keep it really simple, really applicable, really positive, and we really come off more as like the informed consumer, and then we're facilitating great conversations with our guests. And then we just recently came out with our protein powder, Noble Origins, which you've been taking in your morning shake, which you really appreciate.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's an all-in-one animal-based protein powder, and what that means is the protein actually comes from beef, so it's coming from the muscle and connective tissue of the cow. So it's really high protein, really high bioavailability. There's colostrum powder, which is great for the gut. It's great for immunoglobulins as well, too. There's a full organ complex in there, so it's just nobleorigins.com, and we're just going to keep fighting until we get more people on this movement.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's a very good product. I take it pretty much every day. And, I would recommend a good MCT oil powder. Definitely. Oil or powder, one of the two, should be part of your daily routine as well. We just don't get enough. We don't get enough good lipids anymore. I mean, this HDL versus LDL thing is all a canard, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you need a lot of good fat in your body.
Yeah.
Good fat. The reason I said that about it being a canard is because good fat people think means LDL, but I mean just good fat. I don't give a fuck about any of that nonsense.
Yeah. Did you ever hear about that Arctic explorer Stephenson from like the early 1900s?
Yeah, he wrote a fucking thing about the Inuits, right?
Yes.
Yeah. About how they only eat animal protein and fat, basically, because there's no fucking vegetables growing in the goddamn Arctic.
Yeah, he was like bewildered at how good he felt because his ship got stranded with the Inuits for a year, so he followed their diet, felt amazing. Came back to the U.S., was like, I don't need vegetables, I don't need fruit, I don't need anything but meat. So the Bellevue Hospital did a study where he went basically pure carnivore for a year in like 1910. And the only time he got sick was he noticed he was eating cuts of meat that were way too lean, upped his fat, and felt immediately better afterwards. So to your point, people that go wrong with carnivore, they're typically not getting enough good lipids or enough good fat. So I'm like pretty liberal with tallow, butter.
They're eating chicken and fucking fillets.
100%.
Like, fine, right? Like, but that's not the thing, man.
Yeah.
People like, I remember my ex from like 10 years ago. I baked chicken wings and I'm eating them. She goes, you know how much fat's in that skin? I'm like, hopefully a lot. You dumb bitch.
I want more.
I don't. That's the only part of the chicken that's even valuable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's why we don't eat enough fish either. But I'm very suspicious of the fish these days.
Definitely.
Right? I mean, it's just farmed all to hell and back. So I'm not too concerned about eating fish anymore.
They're coming out with crazy studies that apparently grass-finished bison has a better omega-6 profile than wild-caught fish, which is really interesting. So that's what's cool too, is as we get more scientific studies to back a lot of this stuff that are going to be pro-red meat, it'll be interesting to see what happens if we continue to suppress the science, if we're able to use social media effectively to get this stuff out. But yeah, apparently grass-finished bison is more nutrient-dense than wild-caught salmon.
That's not surprising. What are you going to do? Right?
Yeah.
All right, well, tell everybody where they can find you before we get out of here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Podcast is the Meat Mafia Podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube as well. We post all the long form episodes on YouTube. My Twitter handle, which is where we put out most of our content, is Meat Mafia Brett. And then if you're interested in getting some Noble Protein, and the website's just nobleorigins.com.
All right, guys, go check it out. Thanks for coming today. I appreciate the conversation.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you all for listening to Twin City.